Everyone's chasing the next big thing like crypto, you know who you are. But the easiest and most effective way to build wealth is the one that isn't talked about. It actually works. First and foremost, you got to dispel the whole slave and save, build and wait, set it and forget it strategies that are absolutely failing right now. Because we've always taught to accumulate our money. Why are we taught that? Because big institutions, financial institutions and banks, we're talking about the Merrill Lynches and the Goldman Sachs and all these companies, they literally bank. They literally make money off of you leaving your money parked there. Let it set it and forget it. Let it build their compound interest, which really just compounds their income, not yours. But it builds that interest and they just get paid more and more over time. They want you to keep saving. You notice that it's never a bad time to invest in the stock market, right? If the market goes up, they're like, just keep saving away. If it goes down, hey, put more in. It's dollar cost average because, that's the best thing ever. So they keep telling you to do this stuff. Notice it's never a bad time to save. If they were really honest, they'd say, hey, listen, just save up your cash until the market crashes, throw it all in at once, and then do it again, right? Just keep saving it, throw it in the market, you'll make more money. And the truth is you would, but if they'll say, oh, you can't time the market, so just keep putting it in. So this is the problem with that whole strategy of just build it and set it aside and wait forever. Even if you're doing 401ks and stuff, get your match and everything else, which really only makes up for the bad performance of the funds they put you in, which is even worse than the stock market. So that's the thing. Real wealth builders don't go put their money in things like mutual funds and stock market. Now I know some of you are gonna blast me for this, but hear me out. Hear what I'm talking about here. Real wealth builders build wealth first, not in the market. They build their wealth often in business or in investments, right? They're often active in what they do. They're not just the typical person that works a W-2 job. They just save and save in their 401k. You never hear about the wealthy people saying, hey, how'd you become a billionaire? I saved in my 401k and I got my match by saving $20,000 a year. Never happens. Said no one ever, right? It doesn't happen that way. So here's the difference is that people that often become wealthy have great income coming in. They often have a business that produces great income and or sell that business, exit that business, making massive money, and then they might put their money with wealth managers, including into mutual funds. But that's not where they make their money. They're just trying to put it somewhere to say, hey, at least I can park it, make some interest or whatever. But they're always not, but just so you know, they're not always going into the same mutual funds you're going into. Often they're putting their money in things like hedge funds, right? And hedge funds can invest in a lot of different things, including things we talk about on this very channel. Things like alternative investments, things with real estate, but real real estate, not REITs, but real estate investments that you actually have real assets backing it up. They're doing things with oil and gas or gold and silver. They're doing all these kind of things. They're actually available to really all of us. We just don't know it, okay? So that's the biggest thing is that wealthy people do it differently. They make money first and foremost in their investments, and their investments are usually real estate based and or their business. That's where the wealth has been proven to be made, not saving and slaving away in your mutual funds. Now, let me go a little bit into this deeper too, because maybe you are that business owner. Maybe you are a real estate investor. Maybe you're both. Maybe your business is real estate investing. There is a difference between active hustle and passive income or passive growth. So often I see people that quote unquote reinvest in their businesses. If you ever follow Mike Michalowicz, who's the author of Profit First, he'll say things all the time. If you're always reinvesting money in your business, you're not profitable. You're just spending money in your business. And that's not always bad. But understand, if you're always putting money in your business, eventually at some point, you're gonna want that back out, right? I also see a lot of real estate investors that are wholesalers or they're flippers. If they don't constantly keep transacting business, they don't make money. And in fact, we saw this with 2020. We saw things, especially when there was different slowdowns like 2022 or 23. A lot of these guys went out of business and were just as broke as everybody else because they were just making big money in their business, right? So again, this is why you need to have those profits and you invest it for passive income. So just don't be fooled. We got a lot of clients that are dentists, chiropractors or other medical professionals in the health and wellness space, even pharmacists and whatnot. A lot of times they'll make good income, but if you're always producing good income, you will always be a slave to your business or your job. You need passive income to create that time freedom that you so desire. Now, one thing I've learned over time is that simplicity wins over complicated plans. Sometimes I'll see financial advisors trying to use all these little different strategies because they're trying to make you fit into their little box, right? Because they can only offer certain things. Here's what I've found out as a financial advisor. I was not licensed to make you more money. I was licensed to sell you a very specific suite of financial options. The ones that I would make commissions on or the ones I would be able to advise you legally, that was it. But I never talk to people about real estate investments or oil and gas or anything of that nature. If anything, I would say, oh, well, buy this mutual fund, which is not the same thing. It's like a watered down version of it, and you can actually lose more money. And so I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I want freedom to do what I want, which is why I dropped my securities license, right? I became the anti-financial advisor of sorts, and that's why, because again, you want to have something that's simple, it's easy to use, it can be replicated over and over. Many people just do guesswork, but we actually use a very specific system with our work optional blueprint. First and foremost, we're like really digging in, like what's your cash look like, right? What's actually happening in that system? We're looking at also how do you find and vet the right deals? How do we free up cash flow and reduce taxes? And how do we find investment deals that you can actually use that work best in your situation versus looking at everything? What if we narrow it down to a few options, keep it simple? And then of course, have you go and talk to people that are already vetted. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but if you already know that you don't have to go searching around looking for those people, you can save yourself dozens of hours a week. I literally have a client that spent 10 or 20 hours a week looking for new real estate investments, and he was a chiropractor. Instead, we said, look, you can do this. Man, that guy was so happy because he spent just a few hours a week. He was able to make deals so much faster and make so much more money because of that. He was able to take action, protect the wealth as you start to build out that plan and make sure you have the right insurances and legal work in place. And then, of course, compound your income. Take that passive income, reinvest it so you keep compounding that passive income versus compounding interest. That's what everybody gets wrong. They're trying to compound interest for so long that they lose sight that the real thing that you always want is income. You want financial freedom because that income will pay your bills. That income will give you the freedom you want to be able to visit your grandkids, or even earlier. Maybe your kids don't even have grandkids yet because you can do it so much younger because you have that option. And that's the thing. Our work optional system has helped like almost 1,000 clients over the last 15 years. If you want to know how to do that for yourself, go to moneyripples.com/consulting and see if maybe there could be something we can do for you right now.